get my 6. As you can tell by my red sweaty face and my disheveled hair, I just exercised for 2 hours straight. I had my bike helmet on because I mountain biked to the lair of Bigfoot Sasquatch this morning. Hadn't been up there in a while. It's a 30-minute mountain bike ride one way. Then you have to hide the bike in the woods. And then you have to hike for 30 minutes to get there. So I did that. And then, of course, a 30-minute hike back and then another 30-minute mountain bike ride. Oh, no, I'm hot. No, I'm sweaty. I'm leaving my shirt on because I don't want to distract people. I want you to listen to this message that Bigfoot Sasquatch potentially whispered into my ear to share with the masses. I hear you. You're like, what? A message from Bigfoot Sasquatch? Isn't this the same guy that made a video a month ago about a message from God? Yeah. But dude, that one was from God, and this one, potentially, is from Bigfoot Sasquatch. There's a freaking difference. But I'm keeping his shirt on because I know it's distracting. You're like, wow, look at him. No way he's almost 50. He's always saying he's almost 50. He looks like he's in his late 30s. Hey, I want you to focus on the message, not the man. Focus on the man's words, not the man's, hairy, chiseled chest. All right, so here's the deal. For a long time, a lot of you folks have been saying I should go out to the lair of Bigfoot Sasquatch and don't take my camera, don't record, just go out there and see what happens, leave gifts, etc., etc. I've been doing that for more than a year. What happens? Most of the time, nothing. And I say to myself, well, I'm glad I didn't bring my camera anyway. Sometimes, amazing things. Special moments between me and him, her, it, or they. And I say to myself, wow, I'm glad I didn't bring my camera. But today, I feel as if I were given permission to share the message that him, her, it, or they potentially reminded me of, not necessarily told me, because someone else told me this message. I've got to tell you, this is not my original work here. But it brought acceptance in regard to what is some of my original work coming real soon. And it's a message important enough that I think it can help a lot of folks. So I'm going to go ahead and tell it to you here. I was sitting there in the lair, the potential lair of the potential Bigfoot Sasquatch. And it's like I heard this voice say, no perfect. No perfect. And it sounded potentially like the voice of Bigfoot Sasquatch. And forgive me as I catch my breath here, as I tell you this story and drink some water. I'm told by some vertically challenged individuals who live under bridges too loudly. I don't know how you can drink water too loudly, but I guess I managed to do it. All right, so anyway, and I'm also, it doesn't help that I'm trying to do my cool down walking uphill. I'll give you a view. Did you hear that? There's the view. But we might have something over here in the woods following us, so let me... watch the tree line. All right, so I was talking with a guy about a week and a half or so ago down at the Outer Banks, and I don't want to steal his thunder because I think the time might come when he comes on here and tells you some of these stories himself. A very kindred spirit, this guy. He's a woodworker, and like a real one, not just some schmuck that hoards lumber and has some really overpriced man tools he never uses in some sort of outbuilding outside. This guy actually finishes what he starts from beginning to end, sells his products for profit, and does a really good job at it. And I've seen his wares. He's got his own website, sells on Etsy. And I said something to the effect of, when I was looking at one of his pieces, I said, wow, that is perfect. And he said, there's no such thing as perfect. I was like, well, that's perfect. He goes, no, perfection doesn't exist. I was like, enlighten me. So here's what he says. And guys, this guy, he's only 40 years old, right? I think you can't tell when I make my dreaded shirtless videos. I'm like 47. I'm going to be 48 in a few months. This guy's only 40, and he's wise beyond his years because he actually has a lot of real life experiences. Gee, go figure. But he said, he quoted George Patton, General Patton, because the guy's like a history buff and a military buff. Now, he's not a veteran, and he doesn't claim to be. His father was in the Army, and that's kind of why he got interested in it. I think maybe. He's just always interested in it, maybe. But he's not one of these guys that, was an ROTC in college and then never served in the actual military and went out and now proclaims he's a veteran and says he was in the Navy because his ROT instructor was from the Navy. I know, I hear you. You're like, who the hell would do that? Trust me, I used to say the same thing because, people come at me on the channel here in the comment section and say, oh, listen to him talk about how he was in Iraq and he was in the Army, stolen valor, he wasn't in the military. And I'm like, who would accuse somebody who says they were in the military of actually not having been in the military? Because who would actually say they were in the military when they weren't? They're out there. Trust me. Y'all are going to meet a guy just like that real soon in this amazing new work of literature I'm working on. Fiction, but, a lot of tight similarities here with real people. But that's why I went to the Lair of Bigfoot Sasquatch today, because I've been talking this book up. I've been talking about how, other people are saying it's going to be remembered as the book that made it possible for man to finally step foot on Mars. I started to tell you this yesterday, but I was rambling. I just had a massage and I felt so good. My mind was going way faster than my mouth can. I'm from the South, so I can think faster than I can actually speak, and sometimes I trip over my words or they just all don't get out. It's funny. I try to rap like Eminem sometimes when he does those supersonic speed verses, and I'm convinced I just can't do it because I'm from the South. It's just not going to be physically possible for anyone from the South to rap as fast as somebody from the North. It's just not. It just ain't going to happen. All right, so here's what I was going to say. I was talking to a guy the other day about this book I'm working on. He said, you know what, Crazy Lake? He says, I believe this book, even though he didn't know what it's about, because I haven't really said what it's about yet. And I'm not going to, because I'm not going to give it away. But he said, I believe this book, once it's finished, it's going to change the way the surface of the earth looks as viewed by satellite from outer space. And that scared me, because I'm like, man, I don't want this book to cause like earthquakes and volcanoes and cause the polar ice caps to like go into the ocean to such a degree that it changes the face of the earth. He goes, no. He says, you're not hearing me. He says, listen. He says, none of that's going to happen. The earth's surface will remain the same. However, the view of the earth's surface as seen by satellite from outer space, that's what's going to change. He said, you make sure to go to those Google satellite stuff and look at the earth's surface the day before you publish that book. You go back a few days later after people have had time to buy it and read it and stuff, and you look at those images again, and the view will be different. Man, I got chills when this guy told me this about this book I'm working on. It's going to do this. It's crazy what people are saying about it. And it's not even, they don't even know what it's about because I hadn't even finished it. Well, anyway, I was working on it last night. I'm going at it relentlessly. And I've come to the conclusion that I don't think it's actually going to be a full-length novel, like 40,000 plus words, because it looks like it's going to end up around 30,000 words, which would make it a novella. And I'm like, this sucks, because this was going to be the perfect novel. It was going to be up there with like A Tale of Two Cities and The Shining, one of my favorites. But I felt disheartened because I wasn't reaching perfection, It was going to be a novella, not a novel. So I go up there to the Lair of Bigfoot Sasquatch, and I hear him, her, it, or they potentially whisper these words, "No, perfect." And it reminded me of the conversation I had with this younger man than me, who's wise beyond my years. I felt, very kind of guy I like to spend time with, not somebody who comes up with excuses as to why they've, never done anything or why they can't accomplish the mission or whatever. Gets the job done, start to finish. And then talks about his successes, okay? And he's had failures. That's the thing, you hear people who talk about their successes. It's not that they haven't failed. I guarantee you they have failed more than the people that we call failures. They just didn't stop. They kept moving forward, and they focus on the positive. That's why they talk about it. You're like, there's no way somebody's life is that positive and that perfect. Bad stuff happens to them too. Yeah, it does. But they don't want to spread the disease. They want to spread the cure. So they talk about how they overcame those obstacles and how they made it work out in the end. Brah, this guy I met was just like that. So I was like, how can you tell me perfection does not exist when this piece of woodwork that you did here looks perfect to me? He goes, all right, here's why. And he says, and those who understand perfection doesn't exist the most are actually the people who are the best at what they do. The people who everybody else looks at and says, wow, he or she did that perfectly, or he or she is absolutely perfect. And it's not because of harsh self-criticism so much. It's not because they give themselves unrealistic expectations that nobody can meet. It's because they look at what it is they're doing more closely than anyone else. And he told me, he said, like this piece of woodwork, he says, you're not seeing the tiny little checks in the wood that I didn't even know were there because I thought I'd pick the perfect piece of lumber for this work. But once I sanded it down enough and cut here and cut there and sanded some more, these checks revealed themselves and they weren't there in the beginning. So I worked so hard on this piece and I thought it was going to be perfect, but then it's like, dang, look at all those checks. He says, and no one else sees it. He says, they're like you. They see this and they say, wow, that's perfect. And they buy this stuff up as fast as I listed on the internet, on our website or on Etsy. But I see the imperfections. So I thought, man, that makes sense. Because I'll write a book, and I've never written a perfect book, but I've had some scenes or some parts of some stories I just thought were perfect. But then I go back over them once it's been published, once it's been released, and I'm like, man, that could have been done so much better. That could have been, if I would have tweaked it just a little bit, that would have been so much better. And he said, yeah, you understand, you get it. And I did understand, I did get it. And he quoted George Patton. I was alluding to that earlier, but basically George Patton used to say, if a man, and this would go for a woman too, this is just Patton's direct quote, if a man has given you his best, if he's given you everything he's got, what more can you ask of him? And now, what that means is really, we all have different skill sets. We all have different abilities. We all have different talents. We all have different interests. You're not going to be as good at certain things, maybe riding, maybe mountain biking and hiking for 2 hours without, really, keeling over and having a heart attack, as I am, because what I do is I write and I exercise and I work out. In between, if I get stuck on I'm writing and I'm just stuck, I don't know where to go, I'll come out and split wood for an hour. And I get the endorphins going, I'm breaking a sweat, and it comes to me. And as a byproduct of that, I end up being pretty fit. You know what I mean? But you know what? My wife's been gone for a month, and her thing is cooking. And she is great at it. Somebody asked in the comments yesterday, they said, you look like you've been losing weight. Have you been working out? I'm always working out. What's going on is I'm just not eating the way I eat when my wife's here. I don't snack. I don't eat between meals. I eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and that's it. It's just a very self-disciplined thing I do. I've done this my whole life. But when she's here, when she's the one cooking breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I eat enough for 2 people. Well, I'm the one doing the cooking now. It's edible, but I'm not really finding that I want seconds, and so I'm not taking them, so I've probably lost a little bit of weight. But I just went out and exercised for 2 hours. Trust me, I'm getting enough calories, okay? So my example there is cooking. There's no way I can do that as good as she can, or as good as some as you can. And some of you out there, you're musicians. There's other woodworkers watching. So the point of this is, with perfection, we really can't expect too much of ourselves in regard to trying to do something perfectly, because as my friend pointed out, it's just not possible. And so I'm looking at this work of, I'm working on this trying to make the perfect novel, and it turns out it's not even going to be a novel. It's going to be a novella, and also we can't really set our expectations too high when it comes to other people. Because if a man gives you, or if a woman gives you her best or his best, what more can you ask from them? Now, this doesn't mean, I always want to put this in there, if we know somebody to be sociopathic, if we know somebody's not giving us their best, but they're manipulating, no free pass. Me, personally, once I've identified that behavior within an individual, I avoid the individual for self-preservation. But if it's somebody who's genuinely doing their best and they just don't really have much more to give in that particular area than what they've already given, hey man, I'm not going to shun them. I'm not going to call them a loser, because they're not. They've given their best. What more? Who am I to expect more than what they have to give me, right? So I thought that was a really neat message that guy gave me that day at the beach. And I just heard a voice remind me of that message today when I was in the Lair, Bigfoot Sasquatch. And I said, that's the message I'm sharing. I thought, oh, wait a minute. I'm having my special moment with him, her, it, or they. No cameras or nothing. I was like, Bigfoot Sasquatch, is it okay if I share this message? Because technically it's not really mine. And you didn't really tell it to me. You just kind of whispered and reminded me of it. And I heard this faint whisper. It said, yes. Now, it might have been the wind blowing through the trees. Potentially. I mean, I don't know. But I heard something. So that's the message for today. I was biking home and I was thinking, okay, a novella. Well, that doesn't mean you're going to be a bad company. Number one, Pulitzer Prize winning work by Ernest Hemingway, Old Man and the Sea. 27,000 words. That's about how long this piece is going to end up being. A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. 30,000 words. That's about how long this thing I'm working on is going to be. And it's like, don't put a bunch of filler in there, because that'll ruin it. You know what filler does? You're sitting there reading a book at night, you're really into it, and you're like, God, this thing's going to keep me up all night. Then you hit a page or two of filler where the author was trying to stretch it out to make it, a novel instead of a novella by squeezing 12,000 words in there, here and there of filler. That's when you can't hold your eyes open anymore. And that's when you say, I'll read some more tomorrow. And that's when you put the book down to go to sleep. And that's when you might never pick it back up. I don't want that. So I'm not putting unnecessary filler in there to stretch it out. If it's 27,000 words, 30,000 words, that's what it's going to be. Because trust me, bro, once you start reading it, you're not going to put it down. Be forewarned. You better start reading this thing early in the evening, because once you start, you ain't stopping until you reach those two magical words, my favorite two words to write, the end. And that's not because I don't like writing. I love it. But the end signifies I have finished what I have started. And there is such a sense of accomplishment that comes with that. Folks who never finish anything they start will never know it. And it's a wonderful feeling. So I'm not writing the perfect novel, but I'm going to go out. I'm going to go down there, eat something, and shower and get back to work at it. And I'm going to write as perfect as a novella as I can come close to. I hope this helped you today. Go out there and do something great. Who cares if you don't do it as great as somebody else can do it? Do it to the best of your ability. Be easy on yourself, because what more can anybody ask of you? And what more can you ask of yourself? See you for more next time from here to PBS. The potential Bigfoot Sasquatch show.